Welcome back. After a short hiatus this summer, running around Italy, we're back today. And today's episode features Gity Kogan. Gity resides in Los Angeles and practices law, primarily in settlements and litigation. Gity is particularly skilled in sensitive and complicated family law matters, including child custody, domestic violence, division of assets, intricate financial affairs, drafting premarital and postnuptial agreements, and oral argument at the California Court of Appeal. She has represented clients across various professional backgrounds, including athletes, musicians, real estate investors and developers, medical and legal professionals. Gity is also a certified minors counsel qualified to represent children in high-conflict dissolution proceedings. To find out more about Gity and her work, please visit koganlawapc.com or click the link in the show notes. Enjoy. Gity, welcome in today.
Hi.
This is so exciting.
I'm excited.
I wanted to have a divorce attorney for so long. I've been hearing podcasts with divorce attorneys, and I'm like, I want to do it. I'm so interested in the topic. But it's actually not so easy to find female divorce attorneys. And so I was super, super excited when you wanted to do this, and it was a perfect time. So welcome in. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. I was really nervous because I'm not a podcast lawyer. I'm not an Instagram lawyer.
Okay.
And like I have clients, like they'll sometimes take a screenshot of like some chick they follow that gives legal advice. And she's like, oh, this is you. Look, you guys have the same shoes. And I cringe a little because what I do is so sensitive.
Yeah.
And it's so, whether it's financial or we're not even talking about custody or domestic violence, but, even women that are like asking or clients where I'm trying to get them astronomical settlements that for somebody who's making $100,000 a year, $50,000 a month in support is like astronomical, but for that person, it's nothing because they're used to spending very differently.
Right.
I understand that these are things that for that person, that's their whole life.
Yeah.
They don't have any other out except for whatever I can carve out for them through a mediation or through the legal process. And so I take that very seriously, and I know that it's so sensitive because this is somebody's life. These are their children. This is their livelihood, whether it's a man and he's about to be paying 58% of his entire income to somebody. And so now he's going to live in an apartment so that somebody else can live in his house and pay attorney's fees. And so he might go bankrupt in the process.
God, we're off to a great start, and this is going to be such an interesting conversation because I've been divorced 2 times, and
we love people like you.
I've never used a lawyer.
We don't love people like you.
So I've only ever done divorce like, I was young, didn't have anything to divide, so my situation was different. The second time around, I made the decision. Like we were a little older and had a home and had assets, but I am fascinated by the process. I also am with someone who was currently going through a very, very, very long contentious divorce. I've seen every single side of this coin, and it's wild. How did you even get into law in the first place? What drew you to that?
I always wanted to be a lawyer. That was always the thing. I was always going to be a lawyer. Somehow I segued into pre-med, turned that into nursing, and I was in nursing school. And one day I was sitting in a pharmacology class learning about all the drugs that I wanted to take but didn't have access to. And suddenly I'm like, this is so boring. I need to take the LSAT. And I remember this day so clearly. I'm sitting in this pharmacology class. I open my laptop. I Google where to register for the LSAT. And that day was the last day that you could register for the upcoming LSAT. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm a big believer.
Yeah.
Meant to be. And I never looked back.
Wow.
Leading up to that, I had been volunteering for years at Tomche Shabbos. And we used to deliver...
What is Tomche Shabbos?
So Tomche Shabbos is it's an organization where they deliver Shabbos groceries to people in the religious community who don't have money for groceries.
Okay.
And there were times that we delivered to very incredible houses in Hancock Park. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't understand. And I don't care. I'm happy to ask the director why we're spending tzedakah money on groceries being delivered to a $4 million house when I'm also delivering them to an apartment that's got 17 kids in it.
Right.
And the guy said to me, like, you ever notice how the lights are off in the house? Like, yeah. He's like, her husband left her and cut off the electricity, cut off this, cut off that. And she has a lawyer, but the community is paying those legal fees. And so there is so much that needs to be done that can't be done because the community can't sustain the litigation. Wow. And I knew the lawyer, and I ended up working for that lawyer for a brief period when I was in law school. And I just thought, not that I wasn't trying to save people, but I just thought that if people were better educated by their attorneys about the realities of what their ask is, what their ask should be, and how much it's going to cost, people are going to make better decisions. Because when you come to your lawyer and you say things like, I want the house, and I want this, and I want this, and your lawyer is just a yes person, you get nothing. And my clients, this is really where we butt heads all the time. I tell them from the beginning, I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. And we will butt heads because it's my reputation. And so I'm not going to do things you want me to do because you want them. I'm also not going to do things if you don't understand why you're doing them. So when I have a client, they're like, I want the house. I have a serious conversation with them. Great. How are you going to pay the mortgage and the gardener and this and this and this based on these numbers? Because just because your friend got the house in the divorce,
right?
What is the reality for you?
Does comparison play a huge role in like the way your clients come in, guns a-blazing about what they want?
All the time, because usually, so I want to say 95% of my client base, or maybe 90%, are referrals from other clients.
Oh, yeah.
And the other 10% come as referrals from an opposing counsel, or occasionally just a referral from the community.
Right.
And it's always, well, my friend got X in her divorce, or my friend didn't have to pay X in his divorce. So how do we do that? And what I find is, even with my own clients, we'll be sitting in a hearing and one thing happened and my client got a completely different takeaway from it.
Interesting.
And sometimes my eyes are like they bulge. How could you have heard that from everything that was just said? Because that's totally incorrect.
We're already always listening.
Right.
Or we're biased to what we want to hear.
And think about that when you also are sharing something super intimate, right? Like about your finances and your divorce. It's not that people lie, but people don't always want to divulge the entirety of their universe.
Right.
And so I always tell people, you have to take things of what other people say with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
So if you want to spend all of your money on me telling me what you Googled today and how that does or doesn't apply to your case, I'm not a walking encyclopedia. I'm not here to spend the day telling you how this code section you Googled and that case you Googled doesn't apply to your case. I'm just not. It's not an ego thing. I'd say that is not a good way to spend your money. Right. And if you need a lawyer like that, I don't do that. Go pay somebody else. Go pay them $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 because that's what a bill like that is going to end up at.
What is like an average divorce bill? I guess is there an average?
No such thing.
And no such thing. It's true. I guess it really is so many factors.
Unless you're going to like clown lawyers. and I say that because they are clowns.
Right.
You really do get what you pay for.
That's true.
You always get what you pay for. You're either going to buy Zara shoes or you're going to buy a designer shoe, and your Zara shoe is going to last you a season and your designer shoe isn't going to last you just a season.
Yeah.
You get what you pay for, quality or not.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing if your lawyer is like, oh, we could do this on the cheap, you're going to pay double because you will go to another lawyer in the end. You will eventually come to me.
So perfect segue. How does someone even go about like finding a lawyer? And how do you know when it's a match? 2-part question.
How do you go about finding a lawyer?
I wouldn't even know where to begin. I guess you'd call a friend, maybe? What if you have no divorced friends? Where are you living under a rock?
Call a professional that you respect.
Ooh.
Don't call your friends.
Very good.
Unless you have a friend who is sincere and honest and will tell you, listen, my divorce lawyer was great, but I don't recommend this person because you can't afford them. And I think I overpaid, but I know of another lawyer.
Yeah.
But generally, either call a friend that you trust, not just to yenta with,
okay,
or ask a professional, ask your accountant. There's especially in our circles, we all know a lawyer.
Oh, yes.
We all know a professional somebody.
Yeah.
Talk to that person on a professional level. Don't gossip with your friends at a Shabbos table or, oh my gosh, who's the firm that everyone's using? Because I'm sometimes lawyer number 3 after that like $100,000 retainer firm has been used, got them nothing, not because I can get them something that they can't. They're probably better lawyers than I am, but they have a different business model. The business model is to bill versus to get results.
Isn't that your average attorney's business model?
I think
churn and burn them hours.
I think in every profession there is somebody who has integrity and somebody who lacks integrity in every profession.
That's true.
Is the legal profession sometimes known as having less integrity when it comes to that? Yeah. And so think about it. Call a professional, get 4 or 5 referrals and call them. You will get a feel immediately.
Yeah.
And if you don't vibe with someone, you don't vibe with someone, and that's okay. Yeah. What you shouldn't do is get all the referrals, ask everybody questions, and then, but so-and-so told me this. Mm-hmm. What would be your strategy? Retain me and find out.
Right.
But that's really what it is. Every lawyer is going to have a different strategy. We like to pretend that it's all like this is, people always call and they're like, what's the standard? Isn't this the standard? This is what I heard. I've been doing this 11 years. None of my 2 cases are alike.
Right.
There is no standard. If there was a standard, I'd be out of a job because you could Google your way through the complexity of what I do.
That's right. Wow. I just, it's often, and I'm going to speak about women in this particular case, but really anybody, but when you're about to do something like get a divorce, you're so vulnerable. You're in your most vulnerable state. You are about to disengage from a partnership that you thought was going to be for the rest of your life. For many women, they are not the breadwinners. For many women, they rely on their spouses. I mean, now that's changing and it maybe is even swung the other way.
Not enough.
But still, even if you have you're financially independent on your own, it's still extremely vulnerable to take this step. And so it's just, I always feel for women, because you could hear what, like you said in the courtroom, like people could hear what they want to hear by a shark lawyer who's just looking to take a vulnerable woman and ring her for all she's worth. Forget the ex. Lawyers take the money.
And I see so much of that. And I think that, unfortunately, from what I see, like at least in our community, I think sometimes divorce is embarked on much more lightly than it should be.
Say more on that.
People have, and by the way, I'm speaking about myself as I say this.
Yeah.
I think we all have, in some capacity, or most of us have unrealistic expectations of other people, and we tie in our happiness into what someone else is or isn't providing me. And we so rarely look in the mirror and say, I am responsible for my own happiness. Why am I unhappy? What am I doing to contribute to my unhappiness? I know what this person isn't giving me, but what am I not giving me? And so the vulnerability is always there, but you have to accept that this is going to be the hardest chapter of your life, because it's like you said, right? I feel like you've tied your fortune to this person. And it doesn't matter if you're getting married for the first time at 35 and you're financially independent and all of that. As a woman, you change your entire future, your trajectory, your dreams to fit someone else's mold, because that's what a partnership is. And that's, I think, what we're taught. And you know what? I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible value set that we are given as people who are raised from and in a Jewish context, is that you're supposed to give up some of yourself for this person. You are.
Well, that's not just even our community, I think, and we were seeing the trad wife movement come back so heavily. I think people do find a value in that partnership, in that giving over of, I'm going to tie my dreams to yours. I'm going to tie my future to yours. Like, I agree with you. Like, I think it's good.
It's wonderful. And so when you get to a place that you're ready to get divorced, you have to be emotionally ready, because this is, in my opinion, the hardest thing you'll do, because you are literally severing your dreams, whether your dreams were 5 years in the making or it's a 20-year marriage or something in between, you're severing an entire lifetime that you have built up in your head over these years of the trajectory where you thought your life was going.
Yeah.
And so you have to take yourself out of that vulnerable state, meaning when you decide you're getting divorced, you have to be ready for that.
Yeah.
You have to take that emotional step of, I'm doing it. And you have to find a lawyer that you trust. Because the second guessing your lawyer and having your friends with the fodder and all the extra noise, I always tell clients, I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and hear what your friend thinks.
So totally,
don't care.
Totally.
Can my friend call you? No, I don't care.
Oh my God.
Don't care.
I
Not
so
interested.
see that. And it must be so irritating as a professional. You're used to it.
You know what? It's not that it's irritating. It's just like you are your own worst enemy. Again, you're second guessing me is not an ego problem for me. It creates this thing of like, you don't trust me.
Right.
And I tell clients, if you don't trust me, that's fine. You should find another lawyer.
Right.
I'm okay with that.
Right.
I fire clients. Clients have fired me. It's okay.
Right. What didn't work?
Yeah. You know, if you don't feel...
What does a
that you
client get
trust me-
fired over? What would prompt that?
When I tell you this is a losing motion, you will look like a moron and I will look inept. I'm not filing this. Because you first of all, you're making me look stupid, like I don't know the law.
Right.
And you make yourself look like you're
emotion
just doing
as it
this to
pertains to the case, like something.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, like if somebody is required to sober-link and they like miss some sober-link tests. And so now they're being watched by the court and their custody is limited and they've done nothing to repair themselves or the situation. And they're like, I want 50-50. I'm like, I'm not filing that motion.
Right.
You will look outrageous and I will look stupid. And both of those things don't happen.
Got it.
And so I don't want to represent you.
Yeah.
We've had that conversation once, twice. I'm not having it a third time. I just don't need to. My day is spent fighting a judge, fighting an opposing counsel, an opposing party, opposing experts. I can't also fight my client and I won't. It's not necessary.
Did you always, were you somebody who's always, thought about just, things being just or justice? Because my sister became a lawyer just recently, and she's always like, that wasn't fair. That's not just. And I'm like, I literally just chalk it off, and I'm like, well, that's the way the cookie crumbles. But lawyers do not see it that way.
If you want justice, you don't go to family court.
Right.
There is no justice. It is a crapshoot. It is horrible. It's why I push my clients into settlements as much as I can.
Yeah.
Because you better take something that you can live with in this mediation. Because when we go down there, all of you are going to suffer. And I don't even know how that's going to work. So
wow, that was a pretty bold statement. There is no justice.
There's no justice in family court. There is none.
It sort of depends on the judge, for one.
So you have to remember, a judge is just like you and me.
Right.
Okay. This is a person who may have gotten a ticket that morning, right? Woke up to a parking ticket. This judge's partner may have left them last night.
Yeah.
This judge may have discovered that their partner is cheating on them last night.
Yeah.
This judge may have taken their kid to rehab last night.
Right.
And you'll never know, and I'll never know.
Right.
And they are just a person,
right.
or they haven't slept in a week.
Yeah.
Or you were case number 27 that day, and they are just so sick of hearing the same bullshit of people who cannot put their children ahead of themselves. And so that day you will be punished because 26 people ahead of you didn't get punished.
What's the percentage of people getting divorced that cannot put their children ahead of their own ego?
99?
Yeah, 99%.
99.
Most of the shit you see with family and how to divide children's time and custody typically are around parental ego, correct?
Yes. If I were lucky, I would get even one client a month that truly put their kids first. And the thing that is so scary is that everything that they say and do is formulated in the context of I'm doing this for my kids. And it's like, no, you're not.
God,
you're not.
I've heard this so many times and I see it, I watch it. I mean, to be alive is to see people going through this. Does watching all this stuff unfold in court and with families breaking up and dividing and needing lawyers, does that change the way you feel about potentially one day getting married or having family?
Man, I'm a hopeless romantic. More hopeless than anything else. Yeah.
Really, even doing this like for so many years, that's beautiful.
Yeah, because you know what? I see there's a common thread for the most part in people. It's that people are not self-aware.
Yeah.
And people expect things from other people that they're not giving to themselves. You know, you are the source of your own happiness. You are the source of your own misery.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, maybe your spouse doesn't pay attention. Maybe your spouse doesn't give a shit. Yeah, but what are you doing to change that dynamic?
Yep.
And by the way, where are you going to go? And what is going to be better? Because, you know, just because you see people's Instagram, you know, I always joke about this, right? Like it's that fall photo shoot. That meme is amazing, but it's so true, right?
You know, immediately there's a
yeah, that fall photo shoot, when I see it, I mean, I can't tell you how many of my friends from law school, like I know are cheating on their spouses.
Yeah.
Because they've called me and we've discussed like the elements of their prenup and what happens if they get divorced. And I see these photo shoots and I see these posts about my everything. And I'm sitting there like, my everything is everywhere but in your house at night.
Yeah.
You know, and
it's typically that way. The more you see about how happy people are on social media and how perfect their families are, the more you know there's trouble. Like there's that tweet, the longer someone's Facebook anniversary post is, the more I know that somebody is in trouble. Like,
yeah. And so, you know what? Stop comparing yourself to somebody else. And practically speaking, what's better out there?
Yeah.
You know, can you live with somebody who's just a little distant, not always there, versus, I mean, like, do you really think that there are so many better options out there? You know,
my God,
like, do you think it's so, like, do you think it's so, like, honestly, you know, like, like, you think Hinge is fun? You think dating is fun? Stop that.
Okay, well,
you think dating is fun with 4 kids? Come on.
God,
Get yourself together in your shaitel. It's not going to be fun, guys. It's not fun. You know, like when I hear that, it's like, oh my God, I would love to be on Hinge. I would love to date. And I'm like, you're stupid. You are stupid.
I could tell you right now, if you're listening, it's really not better out there. We both have single friends, some of them in common. It's not better out there.
It's not better.
No, listen. There are some cases where you really have to leave,
100%.
and then your job is important. But I do agree to some extent, you know, there's a lot of breaking up families for really just reasons that could really be worked on, and a lot of it to do with oneself. I really appreciate that perspective that you
know
have.
what? It's hard. Marriage is supposed to be hard. And you know what? Being single is hard. God knows I was single for so long, okay?
Yeah.
That was hard. Raising kids is hard. You know what's also really hard? Trying to get pregnant and not being able to.
Yeah.
Everything is hard. Life is hard. It's the beauty of life. You're supposed to put in so much work. And if you're willing to put in work with a new partner and a new dating lifestyle, why don't you put in the work in the marriage you have?
I feel called out. I feel confronted. But you are 100% right. You're 100% right.
Like, you're going to make the effort, right? When you start dating, you're going to look better.
It's the newness.
Right. You're going to behave better. You're going to be kinder.
You bring your best self forward.
You're going to be more forgiving.
I just did a solo podcast on this, just talking about kind of reinventing yourself in your relationships, because it's the same way you'd reinvent yourself if you met someone new. Like all of a sudden you'd be dressing, walking, talking, doing everything different.
Yeah.
Now, how do you think your not being married and or never being married plays into being a divorce lawyer, or does it?
You know, I don't know, because so many family law attorneys are on spouse number 2, 3, 4.
So true.
So then it's like you're sitting there and you're, you know, like.
Right. It's like you obviously don't have the same value system as me necessarily, because you're doing whatever.
Right. And you hire me for the art, not the science. And the art does not come from having been married.
Yeah.
The art doesn't come from whether or not I know how to sustain a relationship.
Right.
The art comes from caring, you know, and my friends and I talk about it a lot. My friends who do family law, my colleagues, one of my partners, we talk about whether or not the fact that we give a shit makes us better or worse lawyers. Because
that's a good question.
It's so important, right? Because sometimes when I have a big custody case, I don't sleep for days before it. And if I don't win what I think was best for my client's kid, I can't sleep for days after. I think about it for weeks. It affects everything in my life. Makes me sick.
Yeah.
And when I take on a client, I always see their children as my other clients. And I take it very seriously, to my own detriment for sure.
Yeah.
But to me, it's extremely important because this is the most important thing in your life. And you are hiring me to carry you through the most stressful and sensitive and important time in your life, because something that I do has consequences for you and your children long after I stop being counsel of record.
Yeah.
And so in my world, I have to care. And caring doesn't mean that I have to,
Yeah.
have those kids.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me better or worse at my job.
Yeah. I love that. That's very, very true. What are some steps people should do before calling a lawyer? You're ready to give you a call. What should they have kind of at their disposal? What should they have done?
Know where you stand financially, just the basics. Kind of know, like, where do we bank? What are our assets? Do we own this house? And by the way, if we own this house, do we own it with somebody's parents? Is our house held in the name of a business? Like, just basic stuff. How do we own this house? Do we own it? Like, how much is our mortgage? How much is our monthly mortgage payment?
How many women do you think run around through life, through their entire relationships, not having any clue about their finances until something major happens?
So many. And what I always find a little bit irritating is that the concept is, well, he never told me.
Right.
But I also find it's within oftentimes the same concept of, I never wanted to listen when he was talking about it.
Right.
I see it among my clients, my male friends, like, who are getting divorced. And it's like, I would love for my wife to take on a little bit of that burden, shall we say, a little bit of that responsibility to just know what's going on instead of just writing checks and, like, not thinking, like, oh, somebody called for tzedakah. Yeah, I wrote them a check for $3,600.
Charity.
How could you do that?
Yeah.
Like, did you look at our bank statement? We don't have enough money for the mortgage. How could you just be doing these things?
Yeah.
And then oftentimes I think we hear the stories from people, right? Because it's like, oh, he's not letting me buy a new bag. He's so obnoxious. I wanted to buy a new wig and he was being an asshole about it. Or is the reality that you guys actually cannot afford it because you are living a lifestyle that's above your means? Have a conversation. Like, when your spouse tells you we can't afford this or we can afford this, have that conversation. Do you know what a Pesach program costs? You want to go.
Program.
Like, you want to know.
Spring retreat.
Right?
I always have to do the little.
Like,
yeah.
Do you know what it costs? Do you know if you can afford it? And I think that despite the fact that, people live in a certain zip code and drive certain cars, people struggle financially.
Oh, yeah.
I oftentimes, like, I look around and I just think, I don't know how people can live a certain lifestyle. It just doesn't make sense to me because I do people's income and expense declarations. And it's like, people must be in heavy debt.
Yep.
And you know what? That's not helping your, the peace within your home.
Nope.
It's not helping it at all.
There's a ton of that with the keeping up with the Joneses. It's crazy.
So
people probably find out how much debt they're in when they file for divorce.
Right. And then they're like, oh, he's lying. And I'm like, is he?
Oh my God.
But that's what you need to know. You need to know what your assets are. Do we have bank accounts and where are they?
Yeah.
What does your husband actually do for a living? That's helpful.
By the way,
because if you can't articulate it,
know.
Right. Like, if you can't articulate it, chances are he's doing something interesting, creative, shall we say. You should be able to articulate what your husband does for a living.
That's true.
Also ask. I think
but I guess if you don't know, that's probably one of the reasons you're getting divorced.
No, but I think that, like, see, that's the question, right? Is it cultural where, like, religious men, like, don't want to share that with their wives? Like, your job is to do this, my job is to do that. Or does he think that, like, you're not smart enough to understand and you don't really care, so he doesn't want to share it with you?
Right.
Ask. You might be stunned at the fact that, like, the one thing he's wanted you to do all along is to take any interest in him.
Yeah.
And in his life. And that
and
could even be the thing that saves your relationship. Just be like, I just want to know,
Yeah.
like, what's going on?
I sort of have some experience with this because I do like a significant amount of fundraising online or different initiatives where like people are sending me money to like a GoFundMe or they'll Zelle me and I'll move it somewhere. And a very large percentage of them come from a male bank account, even when it's a female sending it to me. A really, really large number. I'm always startled, taken aback when I like do a fundraiser and I see that. I'm like, wow, a lot of these women are exclusively using their husband's bank accounts to bank.
Yeah.
It's wild. You probably see a lot of all the things, a full gamut.
I see all of that. And, they oftentimes, as they're talking to each other, they're like, you must be so like stunned by me, right? And you must think that I'm so stupid that I've gone 18 years with this person and I don't know anything. And you know what? That's not true.
Yeah.
My parents have been married for 52 years.
Wow.
Yeah. 52, going on 53 years.
Congratulations.
And I don't know how much my mom always knew because she had a partner. My father was her partner and she trusted him implicitly. And to this day, she trusts my father implicitly. And I think that there's something magical about that.
Yeah.
And so
we're going back to the track life.
But I don't look at those women like, oh my God, how did you not know? It makes sense you didn't know because you trusted this person.
Yeah.
They shouldered that and you shouldered this, and it makes sense. And if I had a partner 5 years ago, then I wouldn't, maybe I would know less about finances and brokerage accounts and retirement accounts.
I guess it's just, yes, and in a time like today, in these days, don't you feel like it's just good practice for everybody who's responsible for a family unit to be kind of involved in knowing?
I don't think you can live your life like that. I think that you should, if you have, you should have a conversation with your spouse about, hey, we need a succession plan if one of us dies.
Yep.
Right? Like tons of GoFundMes, right? Where like somebody, a young guy passes away young and, his wife is totally doesn't know what to do. Yeah. So you should have a plan of action, should have a will, some life insurance for sure. But if you live your relationship or your marriage in a state of, well, what if we get divorced? I need to know. You're already headed there and you don't even know it. So if it helps you sleep at night, sure. You have to have a little faith, right?
Yeah.
Dating is faith.
Marriage
Anything can
is
happen
faith.
Tomorrow, right? Anything can happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
If you're happy today, you might be miserable tomorrow.
Yeah.
You can't live in the what if we get divorced? Which goes back to your question. If that's what you're contemplating, then start to figure out where those things are. And the truth is, it might cost you a little more money when you have your lawyer, but by hook or by crook, you will find it all out.
Yeah.
So,
do you think the legal system is skewed more toward one gender?
I hear that all the time, and it can't be because I represent mostly men. And I have equal opportunity successes with them as I do with women.
Interesting.
And I see it that way. I think that if you practice long enough in certain departments, you know which judges are more skewed to what, because this judge is a single parent and I know she's got 2 kids because she's commented on the braces issue more than once in 3 different whatevers.
Right.
Or sometimes you'll go to a judge will call you into chambers and he'll say something about private school and how he hates this and this and this and how, homeschool is for the nut jobs. Yeah. And so that if you have the parent pushing for homeschool, he's going to look at your client like a lunatic,
right?
Man or woman.
Right.
That's the art you pay us for.
Got it. That makes sense. It is a matter of just being in those courtrooms, having the experience. That's so interesting. I mean, you really just want to believe they are really humans with their own bias, their own life, with their own garbage, with their own experience. And everything in these people's fate is dependent on how that person woke up that morning.
And they never rule the same way twice.
Right.
And if you're lucky, you get a smart person on the bench. But if you're unlucky and you get somebody who doesn't know the law, you could be right. And you will be so wrong and you will be out hundreds of thousands of dollars and you could lose your kids and you could lose your house. and you could lose autonomy. You could lose so many things because the person on the bench that day has their own agenda, and everybody has their own agenda. Your lawyers have an agenda, whether it's to win, whether it's to bill, whether it's to, they have a weird thing with this judge and they just want, to middle finger that judge all day long and it's going to be at your expense. Everybody has their goals in your case.
Is there a thing behind having predominantly male clients? Did it just start out that way and then it ended up that way? Do you feel like maybe you have some of this more like masculine energy, like?
Men play to win and women play to fight. And
wait,
yeah.
Say that one more time.
Men play to win and women play to fight. So men will listen to you. They will push back because I'm under 40 and I wear high heels and sometimes my skirt's a little short. So they'll give you a little pushback. But ultimately, when you have a frank conversation with them about this is why I'm doing it, because they'll always ask you, why not? And when you show them that there's a strategy, there's a method to the madness, they respect it and they follow your lead because they want to win. Women, but how can this be happening? I've
had such a front row seat
so
to this
emotional.
so many times.
Yeah. And it's like, my response is always, you can't afford the war you want to wage. I understand, I think I was telling you this yesterday, a client, this is like a really ugly situation. There's dueling restraining orders. She's getting divorced. She sent me a recording late at night. And she was like, you must listen to this. This is a game changer. And this explains everything. It was almost a 5-minute recording that some chick sent her of my client's husband having sex with this chick. And I was listening to it, and at first I was laughing, but then I thought I had to listen through it because I thought that somewhere in there was something was said.
He said the money is buried in the...
Right. No, but I thought for sure. And I'm just listening to this and I'm like,
what's happening here? She was just emotional.
Thanks for the porn.
Yeah.
You can have it back now. It's getting deleted off my server.
Yep.
Because I know my secretary already saved it, and I emailed. I'm like, guys, I want this off the server. I don't want this.
Of course not.
But it's like, why would you send that to me?
She's emotional.
And nobody cares. And so I tell them all the time, and it's always the conversation, but he this, but he that. Great, nobody cares. We are a no-fault state. Mm-hmm. The hookers only matter if you can show that community funds were used to pay for them. The drugs,
pro tip, ladies.
Right. And for the most part, you're not going to see, Zelle to Heidi Fleiss. If you're lucky, great. Do I every once in a while get a nugget and a guy put on his black card, his membership to Sanctum?
Right.
Yeah, I've gotten that, and it was amazing because I was the only one at the firm who knew what it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys, by the way, he's dropping 20 G's a month at Sanctum. And then he's going into their private parties in addition. And they're like, how do you know about this? I'm like, that's not important. But the point is that, here's 200 G's worth of Sanctum that could go back to the community. But beyond that, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
In the law, we can distinguish a shitty, emotional husband from a good father.
Right.
We draw that distinction. And the fact that people cannot is human folly. Nothing is black and white.
Right.
You can be a cheater and an amazing parent.
It's true.
You can be.
Yep.
And yes, I think that in a perfect world, how can a cheater, do that to the mother or the father of their kids? You know what? People can do a lot of horrible things to each other.
Yep.
And still be there for their kids.
I've had so many personal experiences with this, and it just gets me so upset that a man will do something to his wife or a wife will do something to her husband. And the unfortunate byproduct of all of that is that the children are in the worst shit of their lives. And it just really doesn't have to be that way.
It really doesn't. And I think that people don't understand that, and that's where the nuance comes in. Mm. When clients say, well, what's the typical request I should make? And I'm like, tell me about your kids. Mm. What works for your kids? Like, do your kids like your husband, by the way?
Yeah.
And does your husband actually like them?
Yeah. Do they feel safe there? Do they like being with them?
But does he like them?
Yeah.
And is he the guy that's going to try? Because this is a huge wake-up call. And also, we have to let people fail. Because you know what? You were not a model mother when you had your first at 19. You didn't know what the hell you were doing, and your mom had to come live with you for 3 months.
Right.
And we let you try, right? We didn't take the baby from you and say, when you're ready, you'll get the baby back.
It's true.
Trial and error. And you know what? Maybe you're not the model parent either.
I've seen
God
so
knows
many
I don't
women.
see any model parents.
No. Well, I see a lot of women who get angry at their husbands for leaving them or for cheating on them or for deciding that the marriage is over. And the children are always the pawns. Oh, you don't love me? You won't have the children either. And that, to me, is a crying shame because you see a lot of very, very brilliant dads lose their kids to this. A lot.
Yeah. And it's
You must see a lot if you represent men.
I see it all the time. And it's so shocking to me because, at the tail end, and I'm also a minors counsel. So sometimes when there's high conflict, the court appoints me to represent the children.
Okay. I love that exists and that you do that.
I have to tell you, most minors counsel are lazy and horrific because the pay is crap.
Ugh.
So I luck out in that I get appointed on the more private cases. So I get to charge my hourly, whatever.
Right.
Oops.
Well, still, you should get paid for the work you do. But it's nice that there's a space where they're like the children should have their own representation in a way. Is that what it is?
Yeah, but I think it's overutilized.
Okay.
And I think that it's, again, it's
like overutilized, like the kids are just entitled shitheads and they're like, I want my own representation.
No, it's just like the judge is like, well, I can't figure out what to do. I'm appointing minors counsel. No, everybody calm down.
Right.
Why do we need a third lawyer on this who's just going to be in conflict with the parents?
Yeah.
And there's no money to pay the lawyers that they have. So now where are we going to get money for a third lawyer?
Got it.
And now we're literally dragging kids into this because these kids are seeing, hopefully they're in therapy.
Yep.
They're seeing therapists. Okay. They probably have some like other issues that are now we're learning about. So they're seeing their occupational therapist and their speech therapist. All these kids do all day is talk to anybody but their parents about what's going on in their lives. And they're already put in between them. And then you give them a lawyer? And now they know that everything they say to this lawyer is going to be told to a judge. So now they know that when they say, no, Mom, I don't want to go to Dad's house this weekend. I love you. I want to spend Shabbat with you. But then they tell Dad the same thing because they don't want to hurt either one. And I had a judge once tell me, he was talking to the clients and he was like, do you guys understand that when you do this, your kid realizes that they are half of you and half of you.
That's right.
And when you hate that half, the kid internalizes it like you hate half of me. You hate me because I am this person's child.
I have goosebumps.
Because
I really feel that. I felt that.
I see
How
it.
could you not feel that way? You are a byproduct of both of your parents. If one parent hates another, how could you not feel that a parent hates a little part of you?
Yeah. And then you force...
What if you look like the parent that they hate?
And then you force a 10-year-old into this protective mode over one of you or both of you? That's not where that kid needs to be. Like, that's not fair.
What are your thoughts on prenups?
If you have something to prenup, okay.
Yeah.
I think that, like, if you come from a family that has means or assets, I think that you owe it to your family and your siblings, right?
Yeah.
Because marriage is a chance.
Okay.
You get to jump off the cliff holding hands with somebody. Your siblings don't have to take that hit.
That's true.
Your parents don't have to.
That's true.
And so I think that, like, that's also a respectful way to tell your partner, listen, this is what they need.
Yeah.
I think that, think about the age, right? If you've got a guy who's like in his late 30s, early 40s, and he wants a prenup and he has no assets, and it's like, because I'm going to make money one day, like, homeboy, you haven't made money yet. You're not going to make money. Like, stop it. Go,
like a dream.
Go keep, doing your Amazon warehouse stuff, whatever it is that you're doing. And so maybe and maybe that's...
I'm sort of starting to see why you represent more men.
But like those guys, like, I think that could be a hint for you of like the sign of what to come. Like,
right.
he thinks he's so great. Like, where is it at?
Right. But also, if you haven't made the money yet, like you're saying, if it's family money and you and it's not yours and some came precedes you. But if you're starting out a marriage and you're both on an equal playing field,
and you're like in your 30s and 40s, calm down.
But you're already planning that if you make money, you don't want to share it with that person. Like, you haven't even made the money, but the hypothetical money that you might make, you don't want to share it. I don't know if that's a great start. Like, that's not where you want to start as you need to go on.
I kind of waver on this because on one hand, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, I mean, do it. Right. And I always like, I was recently having this conversation with somebody like, could I argue that my prenup is invalid when I'm going to sign one?
Right.
Because I'm a divorce lawyer and I know all the elements.
Right.
And the person I'm seeing, he and I were having this conversation.
Yeah.
Like
it would be null and void?
Right. Like he's saying I was telling him, I'm like, listen, I probably couldn't even argue that the prenup is invalid.
Right.
Like if I sign away everything.
Right.
But at the same time, like I know me and it's not because I'm a lawyer. If you put a prenup in front of me, and I want to be with you, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Again, hopeless romantic.
Yes.
I'll sign it. I won't even read it. I know one of my partners will read it, look at it, and be like, you're stupid. Do you see what you're doing in here? And I'll be, whatever. Hopeless.
You know what? I think that's
it.
good. I think that's good.
Sign the prenup.
Because you don't want...
That's what I tell people. Sign it.
Just sign it, right?
I mean, we can talk about the elements and the protections you want to put in, but ultimately... that shouldn't be the thing that breaks up your relationship. Because honestly, if you're strong, that prenup, you guys won't even think about it.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. When we were talking, like when we had our pre-actual podcast call and we were talking about this, you mentioned about each person knowing their role in the divorce. And I don't know what you meant by that. And it might be some of what you were just saying, like, what am I contributing to this marriage and or the happiness? What am I contributing for my own happiness? But I don't know, maybe you don't even remember, but what were you referring to? Like each person knowing their role in the divorce? Like, and did you mean prior to the divorce or do you mean knowing your role in the divorce?
Prior to. It really comes down to self-awareness. Yeah. And I think that that's a key thing that people lack in society, right? Like Instagram filters create like a total lack of self-awareness, right? Because you take a photo and then 75 filters later, you don't even look like that person.
Yep.
Do you know how many times I've had clients who are OnlyFans models and like when I've met them in my office or over Zoom, and then one of my girls, like one of my paralegals, like sends me like their OnlyFans page and I'm like, that's not my client. And she's like, no, that is your client. Right? Like you're not even recognizable.
No.
So everything I think in like the way that we operate in as a society today, social media and filters is just, it's not reality. It's a lack of self-awareness. It's not looking in the mirror and seeing me for me with my acne, with my dissolved Botox. Like we don't do that, right? We're supposed to like have the perfect filler when we go on a podcast, right? We're supposed to do all those things. And so we don't look in the mirror and say, what are we contributing to why maybe somebody treats us a certain way? Because we also have to acknowledge that, maybe somebody treats you like garbage, but are you doing something to elicit that response in them? Like, do you also treat them like garbage? And so they just don't feel the need to, not that I'm saying that like, if your husband disrespects you, like that's acceptable. It's not acceptable. But do you do the same thing in like microaggressions and other subtle ways that then teaches him that like, you guys don't have respect. You don't respect him. He doesn't respect you. I can't like tell you how many friends I've had over the years where, they've gotten divorced and the initial problems were he doesn't come home on time.
Right.
Doesn't come home for dinner. Terrible thing. Figure out how to break it. Pick a day that he comes home early or whatever. But also recognize that if you want to have 3, 4, 5 kids in a private school, you want to live in Hancock Park in a duplex even and not in like a shitty apartment in West Hollywood. You want a leased car, a minivan with all the bells and whistles and not one that's 20 years old. And you want a new wig every other year and you want kosher food and you don't want to be eating pasta 7 days a week and you want to shop at Western Kosher and buy the most expensive meat and all that stuff and throw parties and throw really intense like Friday night dinners. That's not a 9-to-5 job.
Yep.
And are you doing anything to make your partner feel like you're grateful for the fact that you don't have to work and that you don't have that headache? Oh, you have to budget? I have to budget is not the same thing as I have to think about how we're going to make the money so that my spouse can budget.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like how much and does he show you the appreciation of, I get up every day at 6, right? And like everyone's got breakfast and I make you breakfast and I spend the entire day, we've got 2 out of our 4 kids have special needs and I'm running around like getting them all of their therapies because I want my kid to have the best chance at life. And then I'm doing carpool and then they're coming home and, 2 kids have special needs and 2 kids have ADHD. And so I'm stuck with 4 really intensely needy, demanding children. And then you come home and I'm trying to be present, but I can't. And I'm irritated. Like, are you validating me? And maybe sometimes it's a conversation of this is what I need from you. This is what I need you to recognize I do. And I need you to tell me what I'm missing and what you feel you're missing. And people don't take their roles in relationships seriously enough, right? Like people get stagnant. I mean, as a lawyer, right? Like you go through seasons where you're like, oh, whatever, I'm not going to answer the email.
I'm feeling so validated because you touched upon so many things that I've been wanting to talking about, the stagnancy. Like, I'm like, wow, it really is a thing. It really is a thing.
In everything we do.
Yeah.
But your relationship should be the most important thing in your life.
Yep.
It should, because long after your kids are out of school, out of your house, that's what you're left with.
Yep.
And do you have a relationship?
Yep.
And you know what? The best education you can give your kids is that you have a relationship with their parent. And that should be the most important thing to you as a husband and as a wife. But you're the curator of the home, right? Especially when you're like, I mean, that's the role we play as women, whether you're a housewife or you have a career, like that's the role we play. You are the curator. Set the tone. And it's a harder job. It's a really hard job. It's a big ask.
It is.
But do you want to be divorced?
Yeah.
Because the divorce part is easy. It's the aftermath of that divorce that's hard. And you know what? It's going to be
divorce is not always easy, but
it's going to be real freaking hard for you to do that same dynamic with somebody else with your ex in the background.
Absolutely.
You know?
Are there trends in divorce? Do you see trends?
Yeah, there's always like the psychoanalysis du jour. So like when I was starting family law, everyone was bipolar. Right? Because whatever, like we didn't have Instagram, I think, or not a lot of it. But whatever, somebody threw out like, oh, everyone's bipolar. Right? And then
you say we didn't have Instagram, meaning now Instagram tells us what the new disorders are?
Yeah.
Anxiety?
Before anxiety, then we had we don't call it multiple personality disorder. We call it something else.
Right.
I forget what it's called, but it's basically a split personality disorder. And guys, let me tell you something. You have to watch that movie with what's his face?
What?
There's that movie where he's like 70 different people. One of them is Patricia, and he keeps women in a basement.
Oh my God. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's like a creepy movie, but see, that's multi-personality disorder.
Right.
Okay, it's dissociative identity disorder.
Oh, God.
Right, just because your spouse sometimes likes you and sometimes hates you doesn't mean they have multiple personalities. They just sometimes
they have a hormonal cycle.
That's true. And now it's narcissism, right? Everyone's a narcissist.
Yep.
Yep. Narcissus looked at his reflection in the river and fell so deeply in love with himself that he drowned looking at his own reflection. Narcissism it's so extreme. Most people don't have it.
Yeah.
Because somebody
just
puts
liking
themselves...
yourself is not narcissism.
Right. Or putting yourself first or being selfish is not narcissistic. It's just a character flaw.
Yeah.
So stop diagnosing everybody.
So the trends sort of come in like diagnoses.
Always.
Yeah.
Because we want to give somebody a mental illness because we want to be able to say that I can't live with this person. They're crazy. Right. They have this.
Right.
I don't know. Pop a Xanax. Maybe you'll feel better.
Edible.
Or an edible.
What's one of the messiest, ugliest divorces you've ever seen? The people of this. Give us some dirt.
They're all so messy. They're all,
they are.
Frum people are the messiest.
Orthodox.
Religious people, I find sometimes are the messiest because they hide their nastiness behind God. Mm. And I represent a lot of religious people. I've also observed a lot of religious people in court, and nothing irritates me more when you're discussing your really irreligious conduct, and then talking about how you can't have a court hearing on a Friday because you need to leave by 1:00 because Shabbos, even though it's summer and Shabbos is at 7:30.
Right.
Stop it.
Right.
Or when people love to like parade in like the rabbis in the community and this one, stop. Or they're sing Tehillim, like they're reading Psalms for you and praying for you so that you, God forbid, don't have to pay child support to your wife,
Yeah.
or that like, the court doesn't rule on the get or whatever, a whole other issue. But I'm saying like things of that nature.
I wanted to talk to you about that.
Yeah. So they make it messy when they bring in the Rabbanim and everyone has to testify and it's so much drama. And the courts look at you like you're disgusting.
Yeah.
We have a concept of Chil Hashem.
Yes.
And that is a Chil Hashem.
Like an embarrassment of...
It's desecrating God's name. When you get up on the witness stand and you have your yarmulke and you have your tzitzis and you lie to the court, you're not a Jew.
Yep.
The first tenet of Judaism, like you're not a Jew.
Right. Well, you're a Jew. Unfortunately, you're just not exhibiting any Jewish behavior.
Yeah, so take off your yarmulke, take off your tzitzis, and stop parading your Judaism because you're not a representative of God or our traditions. You're not. You're a bad person.
Yep.
Take that off if you're going to get up there and do that.
100%. I mean, great segue into, so there's a concept for anyone listening that's not familiar. When you're a Jewish or Orthodox person gets divorced in the civil law, you also have to have a Jewish divorce called a get. And in Jewish law, the man could refuse to give his wife a divorce. And she's never permitted to remarry again.
She can't be alone with men.
She can't be alone with men.
There's so many limitations.
You're basically chained.
She is referred to as an aguna, which is a woman who is chained to her marriage. Like that is the visual.
What do you, as a divorce lawyer, someone who's a female, female Jewish, who's been empowered to go get a law degree and make the world a more fair and just place, what does that whole crisis do in your body or do to your psyche? Where do you land with all that?
There have been tons of men who I know are get refusers who have called me to represent them. And my first question is, did you give your wife a get?
Yeah.
And if he says no, I'm like, don't call me.
Yep. Lose my number.
Yeah. Not interested. It's not a feminist concept. It's a concept of, I don't touch that. And when I have a male client that says, when should I give the get? I'm like, you go talk to your rabbi.
Yeah.
I'm not involved in that. But if you're using the get as leverage, I'm not involved in that either. I don't need to touch that. It's wrong. I think personally that the get laws come from a world where we had dignity as a people and we had a sense of shame. Right? Yeah. Because the rules were that if you were issued a sirov, an ostracism, if you did not give a get, that meant that you had nowhere to pray. You could not buy food from your local butcher or your local farmer. You couldn't feed your family. You couldn't do anything. You were ostracized. Now it's like, well, if you don't go to this shul, that shul is like where all those guys who are all of them problematic, they all go to that place. We've lost sensitivity and shame. And those rules came from a time where we were a people that feared God and feared our maker, feared that like when we, Rosh Hashanah, the day that we're supposed to atone, when we went to temple to pray, that was one of the things that we would have to justify to God. How did I do that this year? And I think that maybe somewhere in the tradition, the laws got a little bit lost. Because there's no way that we created a universe, because Orthodox Judaism respects women. Yep. And Orthodox women are able to obtain a divorce if their husband doesn't provide for them, if they're not sexually satisfied, if their husband doesn't smell good. Like, we are a religion that empowers and respects women. And so I think that maybe somewhere in translation over time, we've lost the laws that created that segue for women. And I think that it behooves our religious leaders to find a loophole in that halacha, in that tradition. There has to be, because you know what? We have tons of loopholes for why
loopholes
guys,
for everything.
Right, we've got guys who walk around with their walkie-talkies on Shabbos.
And the rest.
there's plenty of rabbis with shuls on
Carrying on
Beverly.
Shabbos?
Yeah, guys with rabbis with shuls on La Brea who, if you need to talk on Shabbos on your phone because it's going to keep you from doing other things on Shabbos, you can do it. Great. Let's create a little rule that if you hold your wife chained for at least 3 years, she's automatically divorced.
I agree with that. Do you
We
get
can do
involved?
it.
Do you get involved at all with like the women, the female aspect of that, like with the movement for change? If people approached you about sort of, I know there's a lot of women trying to make changes in that space right now.
I've never been approached, but I do have some of the judges in the Superior Court will consider the get as a form of domestic violence.
Got it.
And so that is an element. Like, I wouldn't bring a restraining order or request for a domestic violence restraining order on that alone. But I think that would be a huge element. And that's something that the courts are starting to look at because they understand the coerciveness and the coercive control that is inherent within somebody who spends years not giving people a get.
Got it.
And I've worked at firms that represented men who didn't give gets. And I literally said, I'm not touching this case. I don't want anything. And the guys would always want me on the case, right? As like somebody who grew up in the Orthodox world and I'm very active in it, to be like, oh, I want her on my case because it gives me sort of like standing, like, oh, well, Gity Kogan like represents me, right? She's from the community. She went to school here. She did that.
Right.
I'm like, I'm not touching that.
No.
I'm not associated with this case.
No.
I'm not associated with you. And I tell the clients to their face, I'm like, I'm not touching your case. I think what you're doing is disgusting.
It's wrong.
You want me to represent you? It's not going to end well for you, I promise.
No. Last question. What does a successful divorce look like to you?
You recognize that the need to win and to be right is less important than a peaceful ending of this union. Like, you're going to have to spend a long time personally, right? Like, introspectively looking at yourself and seeing, how did this marriage fall apart? What can I learn from it as a person, as a parent, as a potential new partner to somebody? Move on from it fast. Don't give me your money. You know what I mean? Save your money for therapy, save your money for your kids. Because I always win. I always tell clients that I'm always going to win because I'm going to get paid.
Yep.
You get what you want, you don't get what you want, I get paid. So I always win.
Yeah.
Make this go away faster. It's not about being right. It's not about winning. Winning is not giving all your money to lawyers and 2 years of your life and anger and frustration that you don't need. You have already given so much to a marriage that has ended. Don't give it more. Just don't. And you have to make that choice. That is a choice. It is not an easy choice, but it has to be the choice that you make if that's what you want. But if you want to stew in the anger, great. And there will be 1,000 lawyers that want to take your money with $100,000 retainers and $1,200 an hour. You will always find a lawyer that will further that agenda.
Yeah.
Pick a better agenda. It's going to save you heartache. Whether or not you have kids, whether or not you want to have more kids or a new relationship, move on from this so that you can heal. Man or woman, by the way, that's the same advice to all of them.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to be right or do you want to be done? Because you're never going to be right. You're never going to be vindicated. You're just not. It's not black and white. Nothing in life is black and white. Right. I don't have to tell you that.
No, I mean, I had such a hard, somebody close to me was going through this for a very, very long time. It was so hard to watch because it's like literally watching money go through a paper shredder. Nobody's really happy in the end. The longer you drag it out, the poorer everybody becomes. Then, like you said, the only people who make money are the lawyers. I'm like, what was all that? That was so many years, and there's literally no. And I don't know if you could verify this or not. Very often, especially if you have a good lawyer, you end up right around where your good lawyer told you were going to in the first place. If your lawyer knows what they're doing, and they're like, here's probably where you're going to land, give or take. Yeah. And then you go through so much time and money and the emotional drain on the body, on the psyche, on the family unit, what it does.
Yeah. You want to spend $250 in legal fees to end up where you started, or do you want an extra $250 there?
Yeah. $250 to put your kids through, to get them in therapy and give them a great education.
To give yourself a year to just
recover.
Be a person.
Yeah.
Why do you want to give me your money?
Yeah.
Why do you want to pay my mortgage? Thank you, but why?
Yeah.
And it's, by the way, it's not out of generosity toward me. It's out of a desire to fight.
Yep.
Pick a different battle.
Great place to end. Thank you so much. This was enlightening and interesting, and I just found and if anyone's watching, they will just see my head bobbing the entire time. I love your perspective. I love your approach to it. I appreciate it so much, and thank you so much for doing this today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to at least tell people what not to do, how not to make the mistake that lands you in my office or lands you in the office of somebody who's going to just take all your money and get you nothing.
Yeah.
Avoid the lawyers if you can.
Dang, from a lawyer.
Yeah, avoid us. But also talk to one.
Yeah.
Consult with one. Know your rights, know what's up, and then avoid us at all costs.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.